Welcome, everybody, to the Raad Life, the only talk radio show that takes you along with host and age explorer Rod Gantos on his continuing journey of discovery into life's challenges, opportunities, options, and all the latest and greatest things that come with getting older. The Raad Life is brought to you this week by Your Home for a Lifetime, a company dedicated to empowering you to stay safely, independently, and comfortably in your own home. And now here is your host, Rad Gantos.
Good afternoon, Orange County. Here we are again with another episode of the Raad Life, coming to you from Orange County's only streaming versus screaming talk radio.
That's right. That's right.
Yes.
And in celebration of that fact, you're wearing kind of an orange shirt.
I am. I like to think that not a lot of people can pull off orange, especially when it's not Halloween.
You do it well.
You do it well. But
Thank
you did. But I have to note that it's a checkered orange shirt, probably in keeping with your checkered past.
I think yes, true. But and thank you for that affirmation. Right. I feel like I'm in a confessional. Is this Irish church confessional?
Irish.
I like the Irish bar format better than.
They're really the same thing.
Oh, that's right.
Crying in your beer here.
That's right.
I'm so sorry I did this.
Okay.
Well, and I got to tell you, the pocket scarf matches it nice.
Oh, thank you.
Yes. He's big on that.
Very,
He's really
very
good
nice.
at it.
Yeah.
This is a style icon here.
Wow. Okay.
You are.
Did my check clear? Is
No,
that what
I'm telling you, you're always
I
putting me
appreciate
to
it.
shame.
So, ladies, I need some affirmations from you because I just got two from two gentlemen here, and I feel like a little out of balance.
Yeah.
Welcome everybody, and thanks for joining us again today. I cannot believe I've been doing this show for more than 4 years, and it's every time I think we're going to start getting into a habit of a routine, and
Never.
we never do. And if you were with us last week,
Boy, that was a wild one.
that was a wild ride. And
sorry, folks, for me getting so wound up, but I did.
no, people tune in to hear you
It
get
was
wind up.
Passion.
Yeah,
You hit a button there. That
So I'm going to share something. I shared this with Steve as we were walking over, and I will share it with people that are listening because it's a little bit of an inside joke here, and it's going back a little bit from when we started. I would come in here and we'd do this little riff, Paul and I, okay, and we would do it almost religiously every time, and people would basically call in and say, "What is going on with you guys?" And all this stuff, and then Paul basically said, "Yeah, this is kind of cool." And I said, "Yeah, Paul is kind of like my Robin." And Paul thought, God bless his heart, he's a baby boomer, pow, boom, bam, TV on Saturdays, right? But he goes, "Oh yeah, like Batman and Robin." And I said, I said Howard Stern and Robin.
Oh yeah, see, I didn't think of that one.
Yeah, which he blushed. And then he just hasn't shut up since then. But
she talks less than I do.
You know what? Yes, Robin. Anytime you want to fill Paul's position,
she knows her place better than I do.
But the show last week was very typical for us, which is basically it was not an easy topic. It was one that we felt that we brought in some new perspectives, maybe too, and we like doing that, and I really enjoy actually talking about stuff that's difficult. And one of the most difficult things that we are facing, I think, as a county, as a country, as a generation probably, and it does not just impact one particular generation, it has also almost like a multi-generational impact, is this thing that we are not prepared for, and it's happening around us every day, and it has been for a while, and it's happening at a rate of about 10,000 people a day turning 65, and that is about getting older, like aging, becoming seniors. The definition of being a senior has changed dramatically over the last decade. The way we service people that are in need, that are vulnerable population, has changed because the profile of that person has changed as a senior. We're talking about everything as a society, from increasing retirement age to encore careers. 10 years ago, I'd say encore careers, and people go, encore what? Is that what happens at the theater when you're done with the play? Right? There's terminology that has now been added. From the day one when we started doing the show, we would talk about baby boomers being hippies and then yuppies, and then what are they now? And then Paul last month came up with, you are what?
I feel I came up with the perfect acronym
you'll
from where I am.
I don't agree with him, but you'll love this.
When I was young, I was idealistic. I was a hippie. Then I got married and raised a kid, and suddenly I was a yuppie. It was all about me and success. Now I'm just a pissed off old person. I'm full of poop.
He's a poop.
I'm a poop.
But and I think, speaking for your generation and indicative of your baby boomer heritage, I think being upset and angry and making a difference in how aging is all about, about time you guys came around, right? You want to call it that? I don't call it poop, but yes. The point is that aging is happening to everybody that you know. None of us are...
And I'm pissed off about it.
Right. And it affects family members. I've got two parents that are basically dealing with stuff that right now is making a complete difference in how we structure our lives, extended family-wise, their lives. It puts different things into perspective. And it's almost like an overflowing river, right? I mean, we call it the silver tsunami. Right? It's an overflowing river. It's overwhelming. And believe it or not, a lot of this taking care of, which has financial implications, is coming out of savings. It's coming out of people's, estates. It really isn't a lot of safety nets out there to provide the care or to find ways to pay for it. And so, I will give a shout out to certain organizations like Mr. Moyer here sitting in front of me. Steve is the new, not new, 2 years now, CEO for AGEWELL, which is an amazing, very iconic organization. Shout out to Dr. Marilyn Diddy, who founded it years ago, and it's very instrumental in providing those kind of services and safety net for seniors on many levels in South County. Their Senior Serve, shout out to Susan Piperi and Holly over there, and then also, the Council on Aging. There's certain gatekeepers in Orange County that are very instrumental in providing that safety net. But with that being said, it's such an overwhelming task, and it's only increasing. Every day we add more people to the roster that need that help, right? So I want to welcome Steve. Sorry for the long introduction.
No, thank you. I'll tell you, first of all, it's a real pleasure to be here today. And for the listening audience, I've got to say that these two guys get together well, Raad and Paul, and it's a fun environment. So thank you.
Well, we try and tackle tough topics in a real, not necessarily entertaining always, but in a real way. Let's make it a real conversation. Sometimes we cry, sometimes we laugh, sometimes we get mad.
We're so used to, these days, living in a world of sound bites, not really in-depth exchanges, avoiding conversations that are uncomfortable because we feel like we have nothing to contribute or nothing positive is going to come out of it, or so overwhelming a task. Here's the thing, and I say it almost at the end of every show: don't stop talking, don't stop conversing. Okay, in the South they call it visit. Okay, visit with people, right? If you don't have those conversations, the only thing that is guaranteed is that no change will happen.
Yeah.
So, Steve, I know you are in this current role, but would you take a minute and give people a little background on you, and then how you got involved with AGEWELL?
Absolutely. I actually went to Michigan State University.
I'm sorry for you.
And Paul went to University of Michigan. Yes. And recruited out of college, and that brought me to Los Angeles. I was in the hotel industry and the restaurant industry for 42 plus years and ran some restaurant corporations. And what ended up happening was a friend of mine was at the time president of AGEWELL Senior Services, Inc., and he was the president of the board, and he asked me to come on the board and chair the nutrition committee. So that got me involved with this nonprofit. The thing, Raad, that really changed my life as far as the nonprofit was one day I had agreed to go on a Meals on Wheels run because I wanted to learn more about what types of things AGEWELL did. And that particular day was a day when one of our restaurants in Hawaii was potentially in trouble of being blown away by a hurricane. And so I was monitoring that. And as I went out on this Meals on Wheels, I thought, gosh, why am I spending my time to do this today?
You got this other thing that you should be
the other
focusing
things
on.
going on. And so what ended up happening was that I went on this Meals on Wheels run with a volunteer, and there was a knock at the door as I watched this volunteer at work. And there was a lady inside you could see through the screen, and the lady I will call Mrs. Smith, and she was rubbing her arthritic knees. She had a heating pad on her arthritic neck. The volunteer was going to be there a total of about 8 minutes that day, and Mrs. Smith just beamed at the door at the time that the knock took place. And the volunteer asked Miss Smith how she was. She indicated that she was fine. Mrs. Smith not only was in pain, but 100% blind, living by herself, and the only contact she was going to get that day was from the volunteer from this organization. The volunteer brought her hot meal and also her cold dinner and cold breakfast, put it in the refrigerator, went through various items and discarded the items that were out of date. And afterwards, in assessing how Mrs. Smith was doing, the volunteer had to report back to her supervisor once she got back to AGEWELL Senior Center and let the supervisor know how Mrs. Smith is doing. She was doing great that day, but there will be a day, unfortunately, in all of our lives when we're not doing so well. And that volunteer is responsible for taking care of Mrs. Smith, seeing what her needs are, reporting back to the supervisor. It's a lifeline.
It's a lifeline.
And AGEWELL Senior Services at that point, that day, after I got out of the Mrs. Smith's house, I was emotional from the standpoint that before going in there, it was all about me. And once I saw what this great organization did, it was about the people that we care for. And it's an essential thing. And 500 volunteers like that volunteer that day make our organization go.
How long had you been on the board at that point?
At that point, I had been on the board about a year,
Okay.
and I actually served as president of the board for 3 years. And but that incident, in all honesty, Rad, really changed my life because it hit me so hard in the heart as far as the services that we provide and the people that we care for.
Well, and to that point, maybe if you would mind, Steve, take a minute and educate people or impart to people who are not familiar with AGEWELL. What is AGEWELL? Let's give them the website too, so they can follow as we continue with this show, and then a little bit of the services that you guys offer.
Great. We serve a 400 square mile service area, which is from Newport Beach south to San Clemente.
That's a huge area.
We operate a total of 10 senior centers, and in those, what AGEWELL does is we serve Meals on Wheels out of those 10 centers and that 400 square mile service area. Last year was roughly 342,000 Meals on Wheels that we served. In addition, we provide senior center lunches in those senior centers. Last year we served about 76,000 of those. Wow. And those are for people that are well enough that can make it to the senior center. Sure. And that socialization, as you might expect, is really, really important for people's lives. Also on the Meals on Wheels aspect, the socialization that they get from the volunteers really enriches their lives, and not only that, but the volunteers' lives too.
Well, and I mean, you mentioned it, and it should be said again. In a lot of cases, and I've heard this over and over from many people that are involved with those programs, is that Meals on Wheels program is not just about the food. That is the only point of contact some of these people have.
And because of that, Rad, we save lives. Yeah. We just a couple of weeks ago, we walked into a situation where a lady had passed out and fallen, and she was in the bathroom, wedged between the shower and the the toilet, and we called 911, and that lady is alive today and doing much better.
Can I do a personal, just 2-minute riff on this?
I figured you might have something. Yeah.
For those who listen to the show, know that I took care of I'm an only child, so I took care of my mom with her Parkinson's, and she died. Took care of my dad after that. He died a few years ago, 5 years ago. And my aunt, who died last fall, my mother's only sister, never got married, didn't have any family, so I was it. And in each of those cases, particularly with my aunt, we went through the Meals on Wheels program. The most powerful heavenly angels sent to what seems so simple, it becomes the most important point in their life. For the last 5 years, my aunt, she wasn't blind, but she was like that lady. She was basically homebound, living in a little apartment by herself, way out in the desert. Didn't want to come live with me. No one else to burden or take in. And Meals on Wheels kept her alive, kept her independent for 5 years. Tony, who used to come every day, was the nicest guy. And she so looked forward to those 5 minutes with Tony. And I felt safe because Tony had checked on her today. And then I'd call her later in the day a couple times and make sure she was all right. Tony, it was completely a lifeline. I can't emphasize it enough. You kept her alive. You kept her happy. You kept her fed. Somebody had eyes on her every day, and she didn't have to go into a nursing home that she didn't want to go to and couldn't afford.
Well, and to your point, Paul, it wasn't just your aunt that was benefiting. It was also the extended family.
Everybody knew that Tony was there once a day for 5 minutes, and then she was going to get fed, and somebody was going to check on her, and that was the only person she saw during the week. And then I'd come out on the weekend and spend time with her. Monday through Friday, she didn't see another human being except Tony. And talk about the program, because it's really been under threat the last couple of years here. Many people have said, let's just get rid of this thing here, on left and right. And I don't understand, because it costs, I don't know what it costs. Talk about the program, who pays for it, and how it works.
The program is funded roughly 55% by the government, and the other 45% is something that AGEWELL, that it is on us to raise the funding for that. The more money that we get, Paul, the more people we can serve. And as I had indicated, right now we serve about 340,000 Meals on Wheels.
Here in affluent Orange County, there are 340,000 people that depend on you to bring them a good, nutritious meal once a day.
And the other thing, too, the socialization that you speak of, it really rolls into the independence of a person too, the dignity of these senior people. These people that we serve are people that built Orange County, and they made it what it is today. And now they're of age where they need something back, and this safety net of our organization, I'm so proud of, because.
And if not for that, what would we do? Then I'd have to force my aunt to move in with me, which would be a burden on me and her, or put her in a home. You know what homes cost? $5,000-6,000 a month. My aunt was making, her whole payment was $2,500. She got from her little Social Security and whatnot. She couldn't afford it. So what else? If not, and she wanted to be independent. She'd been her whole life. She wanted to live in her place.
How much does that program cost you guys, or what's the cost on a program like this right now for you?
Well, our budget is about $6.5 million.
Okay.
And in addition to just the Meals on Wheels, the other thing that is so big now is transportation. AGEWELL Senior Services has transportation, because you have seniors that they can no longer drive, and for them to get to their doctor's appointments, for them to get to dialysis appointments, to pick up their prescriptions, a variety of things that are non-emergency but yet medical transportation. AGEWELL has a fleet of buses and vans that
is so huge trips. Too. That was my aunt's other thing. As she struggled to stay independent, food was number one, safety, somebody had to check on her, and we had to make her little apartment safe, and she had to move around safely because she did start falling. And 3, the little simple stuff. She was on medication all the time. How do we get it?
And yet we're talking about in a way life sustaining. Even though non-emergency, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Dialysis.
Right, but here's the thing. It's interesting because I don't know if I shared this with you. I volunteered for about a year on an AmeriCorps program in Cal State Fullerton, and it was called We Care, and it was basically a program for seniors, for developing services for seniors. And the task force that I worked on was trying to develop volunteer driver programs for. And we talked to the boat people in Gordon Grove. We talked to the senior center in Huntington Beach. We went to different places. We were never able to get the program off the ground because of the liability factor. Nobody really wanted to take that on. But in the course of basically focusing on that, realized that what we're talking about is, you've got medical emergency stuff, which obviously gets covered by insurance or other vehicles. You have non-emergency stuff that's still medical, that you need services like you guys are providing. But even with those services there, Steve, there's still, and I'm lumping all of that under life-sustaining.
Sure.
There's also life-enhancing. And we don't have that. Like what if somebody like Paul's aunt basically wanted to go and meet with her girlfriends for lunch, okay, and she cannot drive. My parents are at a point where, my mother's driving, my father may have a few more years, but at some point we're going to have that conversation. So what do we do?
We have
Uber wasn't even around. Now we at least have Uber and Lyft, but there's a cost factor.
OCTA access is possible, and we are providing some transportation in that regard, Rad. Most recently, we have come into partnership with Irvine, and we are providing from some senior housing to their senior centers, transporting individuals strictly for that lunch and socialization that takes place.
And thank you for doing that, because that is again one of those things where it's not just, if you're an older person, your reason for living is not just to basically wait till your next medical appointment, right?
And the thing is also is
or
that
it shouldn't be
exactly. If we can get if a individual is healthy enough where we can transport them to a senior center, then they can share, so to speak, war stories with people their age. In addition to the senior centers that we operate, we provide educational programs. I spoke about the lunch service that we have, and also we have health and wellness programs and even exercise programs like in San Clemente.
Right.
We have. So,
well, because what we touched on at the beginning is that, I hate to use an old Chevy ad, line, but this is not your grandfather's aging, right? I mean, it's a different approach. People are alive longer. They may not necessarily be healthier longer because there's also health issues that have come up. Most people did not expect to possibly be an additional 10, 15 to 20 years, and so they may have not saved enough. They may have been hit by their most recent economic situation, and they may have affected things. I think if I may, one of the positive things that I saw from the down economy was that actually family units coalesced in terms of assets and resources and basically just support systems, because they had no other choice. They had to come together because out of necessity. But we have an overwhelming. I mean, I think I read an article. I think Paul may have sent it to me about a year or so ago, where it said that the largest per capita concentration of seniors in the country is actually Orange County.
It's Orange County.
And in South County, it's even more of a concentration.
We're going to be one big leisure world if we don't pay attention to this. And then what does that do to the county? What kind of services do the residents require or request? How do we adjust to that new reality? Seniors today are the in many ways like our homeless population, the unseen problem that's right all around us. Because they're inside, they're homebound, you don't see them, you don't talk to them, you don't interact with them, you don't even know they're there in your own neighborhood.
Precisely, Paul. That's exactly it. And AGEWELL is the voice of seniors, because many of the seniors of which cannot speak for themselves. And so we are there, and we're providing the service.
Let's talk a little bit about your network of centers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you have Newport Beach to San Clemente. That's a lot of territory. That's a lot of cities. So are you guys engaged in, basically, when you say senior centers, are we talking about the main senior centers in these communities that you guys are involved in providing those services?
Yes, a majority of the cities will have their own senior center, and we occupy space in that senior center, or I should say community centers.
Yeah.
We occupy space in that community center for seniors, and that's where we produce our programs. That's where we do our the congregate meal inside the center. Plus we run Meals on Wheels out of there.
So how do you guys handle that? You said 55% is paid by the government. How do you guys handle the funding for the rest of it? We receive donations. We depend upon donations. We actually have some major events. We have right now we have coming up, or we're in the midst of our Spring Give. We do 2 annual funds, one during the holidays and one during springtime. Right now, we are running that, and that's really where we're asking individuals to donate, because this money goes to their communities, and this money helps the people that have in their community, that have built their communities over the years. And as Paul had indicated, it really is a situation where people cannot speak for themselves, and to live in place, to age in place is it's proven that it's the best thing. And whatever we can do to enrich their life, it is by giving them socialization, giving them access to transportation, giving them nutritious food. And truly, that's our focus.
Can I give you one other funny example? I just got to throw this out. I always thought this was funny. My aunt's entire income from Social Security and her tiny little pension of 40-plus years working for an insurance company as a secretary was $2,500 a month. Not a lot of money to live on. That's all she had every month to live on. $1,500 of it went for an apartment, so there wasn't a lot of money left over. And she insisted, when she started on doing Meals on Wheels, they said, well, it's free. You don't have to pay. She said, well, I don't take anything for free. I'm the World War II generation, I don't see myself as dependent. I'm independent. Yes, I appreciate you cooking the food and bringing it to me. So she insisted on giving them $100 a month. And I'm like, oh, my God, come on. Every penny you need here for medicine and it was a lot of expenses of other things she had to pay for. But she said, no, I'm going to carry my own weight for as long as I can. Until the day she died, she gave them $100 a month.
And the thing is, Paul, is that, and the point was made a little earlier, these people have worked their whole lives, and they've put into savings, and they've prepared for retirement. But the thing is that they're outliving that savings.
Yes.
So these people, imagine with good faith and good intentions, go through all of that, and then at the end start to have financial difficulties, which they are.
I want to give out the website.
Sure. The website is myagewell.org.
So myagewell.org, and they can find information about your Spring
Give.
It
now will open up immediately to that.
And let's just emphasize again that idea of outliving. It's what scares me today, because I watched my aunt. My aunt died at 94. She retired at 64. So for 30 years, she was without income. Now, whatever little money she saved back in the day, she thought would carry her for the last 4 or 5 years of her life, right? Yep. And at 70, she was given a death sentence. She was told that she had a terminal, sort of a rare form of blood cancer called Waldenstrom's, that the life expectancy was no more than 5 years. So she moved out to the desert to be with my mom and dad, thinking she'd spend the last 5 years out with them out in Palm Springs area, little knowing that my mom would die, my dad would die, her doctor died, everybody died, and there she was. For 20 years she lived with and every year I'd say to the doctor, what are we looking at? He said, I don't know, she's already in the bonus round. She's already gone way beyond what anybody expected. So hooray that she got those years, but it was horrible watching her trying to figure out what to do with them and how to survive them, because it wasn't something she was ready for. Anybody was ready for.
Well, and that's why it makes it's like insanity to me that we're looking at programs like this and basically looking at possibly cutting or eliminating.
And am I correct? Wasn't that part of the last budget that they were trying to? There was the last couple of budget rounds. There was debate of whether the feds would continue to fund this program nationwide.
That is correct, Paul. The other thing that I'll say is that we cannot meet all the demand today.
Absolutely.
And so.
And demand is increasing on a daily basis.
It's increasing on a daily basis.
Yep.
And so to be totally clear, we are a nonprofit, and yes, we do receive some government funds, but the government funds don't come anywhere near close to meeting the demand. So part of my job is to figure out through corporate sponsorships and through various campaigns that we do, the Spring Give and the Holiday Campaign. And in addition, we have some events, some galas. We have a big gala we're going to do November 2nd, and that is strictly fundraising so we can continue. And a person asked me not too long ago, Steve, if you got a lot more money, what would you do with it? And we would serve more. We would serve more. We would serve more. I mean,
and can I'm going to throw another little incendiary comment, and hopefully I won't divert this too much here, but my aunt was a very conservative Republican her whole life. I'm not. And we'd get in debates about different things. And I told her, I said, they're trying to cut back this program. And she said, and she would get so angry about that, she said, because we're not one of the takers. She viewed so many social welfare programs as people sucking off the government, taking. And yet, in her case, and that was partly why she insisted on paying whatever she could to be part of this, and she'd say, I gave my whole life to things. Now, that in her view towards, Medicare, as conservative as she was, don't take away Medicare. I earned that.
Let's talk about the ugly truth, okay? The ugly truth is that we are a disposable society.
Very much so.
Okay, we are
a youth-based society,
a consume and dispose society. We are, in many cases, very youth-driven, which there's nothing wrong with it. But we are stupid in that we abandon and we discard what is valuable and seasoned, especially when it is not ailing to the point where it cannot be contributing anymore. But in fact, we have opportunities for people to contribute for longer. We also have the ability to basically understand, if we choose to look beyond our noses, that when we cut programs like this, all we are doing is momentarily having a feel-good because of whatever ideological position we may have, or the need to basically find funds in. It's like sometimes I feel like we're like just a bunch of drunken sailors, honestly. We're spending money on stuff that we don't need, and we're taking it away from stuff that is absolutely life-sustaining.
Absolutely.
Because in that moment of necessity, well, no, I need to find some money to basically go to the bar. And it's like, well, but that's money you're taking away from, your rent. Well, it doesn't matter. I'll deal with it later. We kick the can down the road. We have this bad habit of kicking the can down the road, a bad habit of abdicating in leadership and taking positions that may be non-popular, in order to basically do the thing that is more sustainable. When it comes to this, if we do cut programs like this, all we are doing is adding a much higher bill to things later. It's like medical costs. If we promote preventive and health lifestyle and wellness, we would basically have a positive impact on the cost of healthcare in this country. Okay. Yes, there may be lobbyists that basically are saying, no, wait a minute, that affects the medical industry and the hospital industry and the pharmaceutical industry and all this stuff. But we as a society, need to understand that if we are fiscally conservative, the conservative thing to do is to be smart about how we spend the money.
Amen.
Okay?
Amen. And to plan and prepare and to just not ignore the problem, because the problem is us. You know?
And here's one thing that unifies, regardless what side of the ideological spectrum that you are. Okay? Anybody in this room, anybody who's listening to this show, somehow believes that they're somehow going to get out of this life alive. I mean, we're all getting older. We all have extended family or friends or the neighbor down the street, whatever. You are never going to be, unless you're living in a bubble where, in order to live in your gated community, you cannot be beyond a certain age. You are encountering all aspects of life. And aging is happening all around us. It's increasingly happening visibly around us. People are, the real estate industry basically forever and ever and ever wanted people to basically downscale and move out of where they lived in order to basically, that's what you did when you got older. And it made
free up that space and go live somewhere
else. It made
else.
no sense to me. To your point, Steve, when you are older, your familiar environment, your familiar surroundings, not only are smart for you to continue to be engaged in, as you may have diminishing memory and stuff like that, but also it is the best way from a cost impact. Unless you medically cannot be maintained in your own house or in a family member's house, okay, you should stay there.
It makes you healthier, and you end your life in a healthier state than
happier, and it costs less.
Absolutely. There are...
but you need organizations like AGEWELL. You need organizations with services like you guys provide, because anybody who has been on the caregiving side, as a family member caring for somebody else, understands exactly the emotional impact of that, the ripple effect on the family dynamic. And if you don't have support systems around you that are providing those kind of services like Meals on Wheels, like a resource, where you can go and get information. I remember when I started doing the show, we would always encounter people like, well, I didn't know that. Well, where am I supposed to go to get information? Unless you know there's such a thing as counsel on aging, unless you know how to get a hold of them, unless you know there's something as AGEWELL. I mean, how many people even know that there's a senior center in their town?
Absolutely.
I didn't, and we didn't out in the desert. It was the Mizell Center that she worked through out there. And you make a very good point. And the question, so I'm going to ask you another hot question here.
Well, hold it for a second. Just get your point out, because I want Steve had something to.
Okay. Well, the question I'm going to ask is, why don't doctors and caregivers know more about this and talk more about this? When my aunt started to suffer and needed help, we, of course, her theory was, I'm going to go to my doctor. He's going to tell. They wouldn't tell or didn't know. It was like, we're not here to address that. And we really didn't know. We struggled for a long time to even find there was a center
so
that would do this.
So that was your personal experience, and thank you for sharing that. Do you find that to be true, Steve, from your experience, or is it dependent on the doctor?
It's dependent upon the doctor. Like in the Laguna Woods area, where we actually own that senior center, all the doctors in Saddleback and Mission and Memorial Care, they all are very familiar with our organization. They actually have brochures in our organization, and we utilize them as resource.
I think to Paul's point, I think the more pertinent point from what you shared, Paul, is that why is it that information is not as commonly found, or that people are as aware of, especially as we get into being more and more of an aging community. Like I have no qualms at all knowing where to go to a DMV. I have no qualms at all knowing where to go pay my water bill. Right? But it's interesting because we still, I think, deal with aging, unfortunately, as a separate thing that happens, not as part of life.
And you never want to talk about it until it comes. You just put it off, and I didn't take the time. I could have been proactive and said, she's getting older, and I better start learning this stuff. We wait until the crisis happens, and then she falls, and everybody's trying to figure out, she can't go to the store anymore, she can't drive, how's she going to feed herself? It's all driven by these little crises that keep accelerating.
And that's really where our organization comes in, Paul. If people would go to our website, which is, again, myagewell.org, and they will find information where they can contact us, and we are a resource for that.
I wonder if the outreach, though, shouldn't be not just to the seniors who need this problem, but to their support network who could feed you.
But Paul, there's a certain amount of personal accountability.
Oh, yeah, I could have done it. I didn't.
I mean, if it's not important in your life, then you're not going to go seek it out.
Right.
Okay, it's a two-way street. Make the information available, but then you have to have basically an interest in seeking it out, right?
Yes, and anybody that's listening today's show, by all means, if they have a loved one that is a senior they have questions about how to deal with it, please go to our website and give us a call, and at that point we can provide resource information to them.
And benefits, if you're a veteran and you're trying to navigate benefits, I mean, that's
as far as signing up. We have situations where
right.
we help people keep their driver's license.
Mm-hmm.
We do schooling on that. I should probably take that myself from time to time.
We should all take that for ourselves.
Those are great programs that I think I didn't know existed when I went through those with my own father. I didn't know that there was a place to help him drive because he was becoming a bad driver, but he needed to keep that lifeline alive. And I didn't know he was a veteran from World War II. I only found after the fact that there were veteran services where they would come to the house and do things, help him with my mother and other things had we known.
Yeah, and a lot of the paperwork is very confusing to seniors, so we help with that too, as far as signing up for veteran benefits.
So let's talk. You got a whole bunch of stuff in front of you.
And well, I just wanted.
And by the way, I'm going to ask Paul's forgiveness here, but we're going to run a little late.
That's
today.
okay.
Oh, okay.
This one's worth it for my aunt. All right.
Okay. Just a few facts that currently in Orange County, older adults 65 plus, we have about 450,000, and that makes up about 14.3% of the population in Orange County. By 2045, it's projected that the older adults will increase percentage-wise to about 17.5%. Out of all the age groups that we have in Orange County, the only age group that's increasing is 65 plus. Mm-hmm. All the other age groups are actually decreasing.
And if you don't believe that, take a look at some of the school districts and some of the mothballing.
Yeah, they're closing up schools and stuff, right?
Nearly 1 out of 2 older adults are at risk of malnutrition. Malnutrition can, as we talk about, living healthy, if people with malnutrition, it causes complications such as falls, readmissions, and it's proven that their stay in hospitals are longer because of that. The other thing that is so important is dealing with the food insecure older adults. 60% are more likely to suffer congestive heart failure or even a heart attack type of thing. 50% likely are to have diabetes. And it should be noted that 25% of older adults currently have diabetes. And
talk about the medical expenditure on that.
On diabetes. And then in addition to that,
my aunt would sit home and eat cookies and eat, when she felt down, she would eat candy. And she's a good Irish woman, she always had a couple of brandies at night here. And many's the day, I think that's all she consumed.
Wow. 3 times, people that are food insecure, they have 3 times more likely to suffer depression. Was your aunt depressed?
Yeah, she would go through periods like that, and
well, it's malnutrition. I mean, your system is not in the best condition to deal with whatever you're dealing with. I mean, a person half the age, someone in the 20s and 30s with bad nutrition, would basically be dealing with that. So
and why do old people have a tendency to shut themselves in? She started closing the drapes more. She was afraid of people peeping in, or afraid of she was always afraid somebody was outside or whatever apartment.
I'm going to share something relevant to food, which I found out about only recently, and it floored me, but it makes perfect sense. Is that people basically, as they get older, may be suffering from malnutrition because they're not eating, or dehydration because they're not
she
drinking.
Didn't eat.
Well, here's the thing. It's not because of anything. I was told this, and I was like, how did I not connect the dots with this? As you get older, it's harder to actually go to the bathroom.
Oh, huge.
To sit down. How many houses have bathroom toilets that basically don't have any elongated? They're not the right height. There's no grab bars. There's nothing that basically the environment. I'm putting on my interior design hat and an aging in place specialist hat on, but the environments are not conducive for somebody, regardless of ability, to universally be able to access and use.
Number one place they fall is in the bathroom. That's where my aunt fell.
In kitchens.
Right.
And so you basically are now going to the bathroom, and going to the bathroom is an elongated, longer now, takes longer. It's more of an arduous thing, whether you're wearing adult diapers or not, wherever, body incontinence, all of this stuff, right? So, in your mind, if you don't drink and you don't eat, you don't need to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
So, in order to avoid the complexity of going to the bathroom, some that people are having a hard time with that are older, they stop eating and drinking. And now they are dehydrated.
And
now
they're less active,
and they're taking prescription drugs because they've been prescribed, and
all
they don't.
That.
What's the first thing they tell you? Don't take your pills without it on an empty stomach. Don't make sure you drink a lot of water. They're not eating. They're not drinking water. For what reason? They don't want to go to the bathroom.
And if they're living alone and they're by themselves and they have nobody checking
no
on
accountability.
them,
There's
now they have the social isolation
Yep.
that enters into it, and the depression that we talked about.
And they start shutting themselves off from the world, shutting the windows, shutting the drapes, everything.
It also makes them vulnerable, right? You hear about all the stories about the solicitations on the phone, and people basically being taken for a ride when their money and stuff. Yes, because they're isolated, they're depressed, they're hungry for contact,
they're lonely. Yeah.
They're lonely, and basically we live in a society that continues to be, regardless of age, more and more isolating, more and more. Virtual connections, not real contact, right? And as human beings, like it or not, we are made for human contact.
And Rad, everything that we're talking about, that's really where AGEWELL's heart is.
And it has been for a very long time.
It
from
has,
the very beginning.
Since 1975, because for a volunteer to come into contact with somebody that's not eating, the volunteer is going to know that on the Meals on Wheels run and going to report back. The other thing I didn't talk about is we do have case management, and also we have in-home services that we provide. And so when we are in a situation where we see somebody's not eating, when we see that somebody is depressed and that sort of thing, we report back, and what supervisor does is engage case management to go out and meet the Mrs. Smith and make a determination as to what can we do, what services do we have, or resources can we bring in to make Mrs. Smith's life better.
So from the perspective of somebody that's been involved in an organization that has a whole bunch of legacy and a lot of roots in the community and has done a lot of positive, and with the reality that you face on a daily basis in terms of your mission and business model, how do you feel about where we're at and the prospects for the future as we get to be more and more of an aging community?
I got to tell you, that's why I stay up at night in thinking about that, because I wear that heavy on my shoulders, and I'm proud of where our growth is going to come and foresee it, and it's my job and my team's job to make AGEWELL be able to take care of even more seniors. Where this increase in demand, we're seeing roughly 3.5% per year. So that 3.5% we've got to pay for somehow, because the funding that we get from the government is basically capped, and so we have to work with that.
May even be declining. It's under threat to be declining.
And furthermore, we have inflation, if you considered inflation 3.5%. So we're talking 7% a year, funding-wise, that we need to make up.
So that must change I mean, I think it's the same probably for all nonprofits, but that really must change the way that you structure going forward with this, right?
Well, what we're doing, obviously, fund development is essential, and that's why, I mentioned our Spring Give campaign that we have and our need for that. The other thing, where our growth is, we talked about transportation. Our growth, as I say, we've been in partnership, and it's a growing partnership with City of Irvine that in the past has taken care of things pretty much themselves. We are now operating more with the city and more transportation. And as I say, it's to get individuals to the senior centers. In addition, we have had tremendous support from the foundation of Laguna Woods Village. And they have, again, it's transportation oriented most recently, where we have been transporting residents of Laguna Woods Village to the South County Food Bank, which is in Irvine. And so we're making more and more runs that way. And then you had talked, and I'd like to talk more with you off the air as far as the volunteer transportation program that you were talking with, because we see that as just really where we need to go, which will help cut our cost so long as we can figure out a way to do it, Rad, and I appreciate that. The other thing is we've got new cities that are popping up in South Orange County, so there's more residents, and so we're seeing that. And then the other huge change is that we have a new generation that's moving into seniors, and so all of our nutrition program needs to accommodate the type of menu that new generation has, while we still are able to provide the comfort food for the elderly seniors.
Well, it's an interesting period, because you've got an incoming, call it younger senior, that has a completely different mannerism and mindset and persona, and you have an older senior that is still around. And you are needing to saddle that. But, we talked about this, I think, before when we first met. It affects everything. It affects your nutritional programming, your menu selections. It affects how you basically present it. Maybe that thing is no longer called a senior center. Now it's called a wellness center, right? Because no baby boomer, including Paul, will go to a senior center.
And I made note of that. I want you to know, Rad.
Okay, good. I want credit on that one.
Rad brought that up, and that's a powerful point, because my wife and I aren't going to, even though we're both seniors by definition now.
You do. I mean,
I agree, Paul.
I'm 54 years old, and I got the magazine for San Clemente. I was looking at Tai Chi. I was looking at some other programs that were on there, right? Because the way that you see yourself, if you're of a particular generation, as you get older, has not necessarily changed from how you saw yourself in previous years. The joke was that seniors are supposed to just get quieter and slow down and basically scale down. What reality is they may be scaling down, but they're not slowing down.
They've led an active lifestyle.
It doesn't stop in their later years, as long as physicality and medically they are in a condition to basically still travel. And we've talked about this on this show. Years ago, you appreciate this from a hospitality background, the cruise industry the cruise ship industry basically stepped away from double occupancy, because they were finding out that basically people were traveling, half of baby boomers are basically divorced. They're not traveling as couples. Double occupancy didn't make any sense anymore as far as how you basically, leased out rooms for trips or sold vacations. You look at nutritional programming, and you look at exercise programming regimens. You don't be surprised if in 5 years from now, or let's say maybe even less, you're not going to have to go to a Pilates studio to basically see Pilates. You'll walk into what it used to be called a senior center, which is now a wellness center, and see Pilates.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
Low impact mat work, right? Because those are people that basically have been meditating and yoga and doing active lifestyle, right? They just now are basically above 60, and there's also a wealth. There's a wealth of seasoning and knowledge. Okay, and we live in an environment right now where, especially in places like California, we don't even put salt on the driveways. We don't take out winter clothes, put in summer clothes. And you guys are from Michigan. You've all done that.
We
right?
did that a lot.
We did that a lot.
Right?
That's why we left.
But we don't do. But we don't do that. So in the course of not doing that, we don't have a programming in our psyche that basically allows for change of season.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, using the word loosely. And I think reality is, look around you. Because you just said 20% of the population by what, 2045?
Yep.
Right. 20% of the population will be genuinely 65 and older.
One out of five.
Right. 1 in 5. Okay. That is no longer a unseen or put aside. Right? And then all the other things that come with that. Memory loss, need for support systems, health and
isolation, loneliness,
diabetes,
right?
Diabetes,
and I'll put this out. I've said this to some people that are in elected office, and I will say it again. When you're not projecting, or let's call it storyboarding, okay?
I like that storyboarding.
What happens?
The city storyboard ever like a movie?
But they need to, because here's the reality. Okay, we are dealing with providing services in communities to members of the community that live there, that basically anybody who is sitting in city council that does not basically support seniors or senior services is not long for that seat, because this is an active body of people that will vote you out. I mean, let's just put it that way, right? However, how are you going to provide services for an increasing population of seniors when you basically are not focusing, and they're not going anywhere? Because if you live in San Clemente with an ocean view, let me tell you something, unless somebody rolls you out on a gurney, you're not going anywhere, right? In fact, if anything, you might actually get a larger house because you're going to have family come over and basically stay with you now, right? And to that point, 25% of all homes sold to seniors in the last, say, decade has been to larger homes, not smaller homes. You don't believe me? Go look it up, right? Reason why is because those grandparents want to have a home that their grandkids can feel like is a second house to them.
Or maybe they have to take in their kids,
or they take in their kids, or they basically are taking care of a parent because,
Right.
So these communities have to pay for more services, for more people. Okay. Seniors that are occupying 20% by 2045 in your communities do not spend a lot of money on retail. They're not buying a lot more stuff, right? They're not basically paying into the payroll taxes of situation.
They're consuming less.
They're consuming less.
They're working less.
But
There's no payroll tax.
Your need as city leadership, your needs are increasing to provide for this population. How are you doing it when you basically are still applying old business model of how money comes into the city?
So
How are you doing it when you're losing your youth because you don't have affordability for them to stay in these communities? That's your payroll taxes. That's your families that are basically now spending on retail. That's the sales taxes that are going into the coffers of the city that then basically allow you to provide for your increasing population of seniors. If you don't think it through that way and storyboard it, you're going to find yourself as a community where you have an increasing demand and reduction of resources. And then you look at organizations like AGEWELL and you say, help me. And you go, we're doing the best we can. We need you guys basically not to cut programs or to support the cutting of programs, because guess what? You're cutting your nose off to spite your face, basically.
So before he does it, I see you teed me up perfectly. Somebody in the course of this conversation just emailed. I suspect they're listening and wanted us to get this in, so I will. Thank you for sending it to us. You're talking about why don't cities storyboard and think ahead and start talking about these needs? Well, apparently at least one of them is Congresswoman Katie Porter will hold a town hall in Tustin tomorrow, May 30th, to talk about issues affecting older Americans.
Who sent the email?
Her press person just sent it to us here. So it's tomorrow at the Tustin Branch Library. It's at 1 o'clock. 1:30 the doors open, starts at 2, and they're looking to have a town hall to talk about all of these issues affecting older Americans.
Well, I will tell you, I will check my calendar, but I think I'm free and I will be there. And I want to reach back and say thank you to Representative Porter and her office
for responding, and then right in the middle of this.
Well, Katie, if I can call her that, is somebody that I know and I have had the pleasure of meeting. I've also will extend again an invite anytime to be on the show, because I think you need to basically, regardless of which side of the aisle you are, you need to encourage out-of-the-box thinking. You need to encourage reality-based conversations, courageous conversations is what we refer to them all the time. And she, whichever side you may lean politically, Katie Porter is actually doing that. And she's doing it, and she happens to be somebody that's from our own backyard, and I'm really happy to see her do it, because whatever side that conversation ends, if we don't have it, we don't have no change.
And if I may add, it so happened yesterday that I met with Congressman Harley Ruda.
Mm-hmm. He's been on the show too.
And he went on a Meals on Wheels with me in Newport Beach area. And I think he genuinely understands.
Harley I've had the pleasure of having Harley on the show. We joked last year we had about a dozen people that were running for office, and about 8 of them basically got elected. So, shout out.
Not saying this show did it, but
No, but give a shout out to a lot of them. Again, we get so caught up in the minutia sometimes that we forget the larger picture of what we're all trying to do. Anybody, regardless what side of the aisle, that basically puts themselves through the ringer to get elected, okay, to be of service to others. For a split second before you start disagreeing with them, acknowledge that is service that you and I probably will not step up to do, because it's very demanding, and it's impacting their families and everything. And so, shout out to Representative Porter for sure. And then I'm glad to hear that from Harley.
Yeah, and also on the other side of the aisle, there have been so many supervisors that have stepped up, and Pat Bates.
Pat Bates has been a great advocate for it. I think
Pat Bates, Lisa has been a big advocate. I mean, Craig Rath's been on the show a number of times, and the point is, it's an unavoidable reality what we're talking about here.
It's not left and right anymore.
Not at all.
It's not.
It's together.
And that's if it's not like in my case, I'm actually dealing with this from my mother and my father at the same time. I've been doing this show for 4 years, and I thought I basically had it all figured out. And then when it hits you, it's a totally different reality.
Really,
and you have to adjust, and you realize just how much patience you have, and you realize just how much calmness you can muster, right, with everything else that's going on. But at the end of the day, we're all in this together, and it's not getting to be a smaller situation.
And how big these little issues become to them. I remember when my mother started stumbling and falling because of Parkinson's. That's only when I realized the importance of the ADA and these little barrier, because that little threshold was like a mountain.
Because when you were opening bars and restaurants, you were swearing left and right against ADA.
You got that right. Anything we could do to minimize, what's the least we can do to comply? Absolutely. And suddenly I'm seeing my mother stumble over what I thought was insignificant. Same thing with my aunt, insignificant, getting to the bathroom, how big an issue that was in her life, how food was a problem, how getting food to her and having her get to eat the food and all this.
This is the short-sightedness and the narrowness of view. That basically. I'm
speaking for the world here.
I'm avoiding saying abdication of leadership, okay, because that applies to it. But I'm trying to be nice today, right? This is.
And I'm not fighting it.
This myopicness of view.
Yeah.
Okay. When we basically look at it, and people go, well, it's not my problem. Yes, it is your problem. Guess what, people? If you're 20, at some point you're going to be 50. Mm-hmm. Okay? If you're my age, basically, which is 54, and you're this X-gen, like bridge generation between millennials and, I know Paul is a boomer. I don't know about you, Steve. You're an Xer? Or you're a boomer? You're a boomer. Okay. I'm the youngest person in the room, I guess. Okay. So this esteemed older gentleman that I have on the show today, right?
That's right.
Right. But with a lot of seasoning, by the way, between hair and beard. Wait. This is not gray. This is seasoning.
Seasoning.
Okay, right. So
salt and pepper.
So the thing about it is, I am looking at this, and I'm saying whatever positive impact I can do today is not just the esoteric impact positively on other people, my parents included. No, selfishly, I want it better when it comes time for me to basically now need these services. And if we and every single person
fix it now
that's out there, okay, your day, I hate to tell you, your day will come where you will need this service, and you have the ability today to participate and partake into the solution and the out-of-the-box thinking, because we as a country are not getting younger. We as a country are getting older. We as a world, in more countries, we're leading in certain ways, but there's a lot of countries that are dealing with this because it's all that after World War II, baby boomer generation, a lot of births, and then the millennials are not any smaller a population. They're in fact probably about a bit larger than the baby boomers.
Yeah, they say they'd be bigger.
So guess what, millennials? 20 years from now? 25 years from now? Maybe if you participate today, you won't be surprised by the realities of what you're going to face. And the costs aren't getting less, right? The demand isn't getting smaller. And if it wasn't for volunteers, and you and I talked about the importance of volunteers, not only does it feed your soul as a volunteer, but it is a necessary component in the solution of this. I do want to give a shout out because you mentioned Meals on Wheels. Is the Costa Mesa Senior Center part of under AGEWELL? It's not. It's Senior Serve. Okay. So shout out to all of the senior centers. But the reason why I wanted to bring that one up specifically is a week ago I'm being asked to possibly join on the board of Project Independence, which provides services, occupational services for or occupational opportunities for people with mental disabilities, okay, and mental challenges. And I went on a ride along with the executive director, Debbie. And the first place we went was the Senior Center in Costa Mesa. The volunteers that were preparing the meals to go on the trucks were basically, and I'm not sure if I'm going to use the right term here, but clients of Project Independence. These were people in different age brackets that basically had mental challenges that were volunteering to be productive members and to feel good about what they could contribute. They were volunteering at the Costa Mesa Senior Center
because they're human. They want to help.
Exactly,
they want to get out.
Exactly.
Right.
They want to have a purpose. They want to have a sense of give back. Right. It was amazing to see this. Right. Because here's a population, another population that people want to not really see, that was engaged in providing service for another population that is in major need.
Amazing story.
Yeah,
right?
amazing story.
Right. And those are stories that are right around us.
There was a lady in San Clemente that one of our case managers said she handed me a letter from this lady, and it was a $25 check. And the case manager asked the lady, and let's say her name was Doris, and said, Doris, why do you give $25 each month to AGEWELL? And she goes, it's my tithing. Mm-hmm. She said, I feel I can do it, and this is all the tithing that I do, but I care so much for this organization. She gets Meals on Wheels. Plus, she likes the case manager that keeps an eye on her. She does have diabetes. But I was so moved by that because the case manager said, this poor lady doesn't have any money, Steve. And she is giving us a check every month for $25. And for somebody to say it's tithing for them, it touched me so much that I wanted to meet her. So I didn't want to, I was going to buy her flowers with my own money. And it's good that the case manager said she's allergic to to flowers. So I bought her one of those fruit baskets that look like flowers. And I'll tell you, this was the most amazing woman that just touched my heart by, the same type of story, and a person that's a recipient of our services really can't afford but gives it. And
my aunt, she couldn't afford $100 a month, but she insisted on giving.
Look,
the same reason.
We live in bubbles.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah.
We live in bubbles called cars. We live in bubbles called houses where we don't even know our neighbors. We live in bubbles of basically my life, and I am not knocking it. It's hard.
Social media bubbles.
It's social media bubbles, ideological bubbles. We talk inside the what do they call it?
Echo chamber.
The echo chamber, basically, to people of like-minded. We are walking around afraid of opening up our minds to other people's inputs. Diversity scares a bunch of us. in its truest form, because there's an unknown element, there's a risk factor, there's a vulnerability need. We walk around like these, these entities that are in total control of everything, when we really, it's a total farce, because we're really not in control of a lot of stuff. Okay, one thing we are in control of is the ability to provide and be there for people. And it's not about money and checkbooks. It's about time. It's about volunteering. It's about caring, genuinely caring. Care enough to have a conversation. Care enough to ask somebody something. And when you ask them, wait for their answer. Genuinely wait for their answer. Not just ask it as if, hey, how you doing? I'm not, and I'm walking away as I'm telling you that, right? Those are the little things that make it tolerable for all of us to deal with some of these challenges, and none of us are going to escape this. I don't care if you're affluent. I don't care if you're living behind a gated community. I don't care if you have or you do not have. Age is a leveler. Okay, it's a playing field leveler. I mean, if you know how to not get older, please call the show.
Yes.
If you have found the fountain of youth in Florida, please call the show. But we're all in this together. And whatever you do today will benefit, it's for the benefit of somebody else, may very much benefit you in the future.
And I'll tell you, if you take the time with any senior and you just start a conversation, and just ask them questions about their life and where they grew up and whatever, it will enrich your life, because every senior has a painting of their life that they have painted from a blank canvas to where they are today, and all of it is interesting, and you will enrich their life also, because they have just been waiting for somebody to ask them.
It's almost a cliche, but truly the only meaningful gift that you can give yourself or others is time. And genuine interest and attention. We could talk about this forever, and again, it's not something that's going away in any shape or form. It's only becoming a bigger, I won't even say problem, it's becoming a bigger reality. We have almost 20% of the population slotted to be 65 and older by 2045. We're talking about Orange County. We're not talking about Florida. We're not talking about God's waiting room, all of the blah, blah, blah cliches that we have grown up with, This is happening in our own backyard. It's happening on the end of your street. It's maybe even happening next door or in your own home. So we're going to wrap up this, but I want everybody who's been listening to this or will listen to this show, please, please, please consider looking into some of these organizations we mentioned. Definitely check out AGEWELL. Consider volunteering. Donations are great. It's absolutely necessary to pay for stuff that we all are going to need. I learned something today about the driving. That there's programs to help people that are older driving, and that might be something I will basically bring to my father's attention. I mean, as much as I am in the know, I still didn't know this, right? So educate yourselves, have conversations, ask questions. Don't be afraid of this, because it isn't something to be afraid of. Aging and seasoning and getting older and growing together versus just growing in time, those are things that are what makes us really value those who have come before us, value the things that we can learn, right? And so have these conversations. Steve, you're welcome anytime to be on the show.
I'll tell you, thank you so much, and thank you for all the listeners out there for your time in learning more about our organization, and any support that you have or possibly will in the future give to our organization. So thank you. It's a pleasure being here.
Oh, absolutely. Rick. Our pleasure. Go check out these senior centers and keep telling them that they should change their names to wellness centers. But go check them out. I mean, I hadn't been in the Florence Sylvester Center for a couple of years when I went over to say hello to Steve before we were preparing for the show, and it has changed.
Yes, it's newly remodeled.
Yeah. I mean, aging is not something that is old and dusty. It can be very invigorating. It can be very exciting. You could be looking at 20 years after quote unquote retiring that you really get to do what you want to do, to be able to share what you know with people, in a way that is rewarding differently from somebody just paying you a check for doing that. It's a different kind of reward, but it's not any less meaningful. And so thanks everybody for joining us on the Raad Life today. I know we kind of took over another extra half an hour, but this is something that touches me personally, something I'm going through right now. A lot of people out there that I know that are of my age or a little older are dealing with it, have been dealing with it. Come together. It really does take all of us to do this, and it's going to be more and more imperative in the years to come. So thanks, Paul, for indulging us an extra half an hour today on the show.
My pleasure.
And let us know what you think of the show. Check out AGEWELL. myagewell.org is the website. And thanks, Steve.
Thank you very much, Raad.
Appreciate it.
You have been listening to the Raad Life Radio Show with your host and age explorer, Raad Gantos, brought to you on the one and only octalkradio.net. Join us again next week as we continue our journey of discovery into life's challenges, opportunities, options, and all the latest and greatest things that come with getting older.